Well, it is kind of a scam when you look at the actual numbers. Let's talk about it with Art Laffer, former Reagan economist, and Steve Moore, host of More Money on WABC Radio. I'm looking at Steve. I'm looking at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. 950% overstated, 630% overstated. And the other thing is, no one's responding to the surveys anymore. So this thing is all being done by faulty econometric models, so-called birth and death models of businesses and jobs. And it's time for an audit and a top-to-bottom change. Trump's being criticized. He's right here. He's absolutely right, I should think. I don't know. What do you say?
Yeah, look, under the Biden years, and they're still revising these numbers as we speak, already they've revised downward by about 1 million jobs, the numbers that had originally been reported. That's a big error, Larry and Arthur. And so they're just, it's like a blind man throwing at a dartboard right now. And then you've got the situation where, look, I've been doing Maria's show in the morning when that jobs report comes out on that first Friday every month. Probably for 10 years. I've never seen anything like that report that came out on Friday. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Those revisions are gigantic. There is something seriously wrong with the way we're doing this. And look, the jobs report is maybe the most important economic indicator report we get every month. So we got to make sure it's accurate. And right now it's not. I'm losing faith in those numbers.
Well, look, first of all, let's put another plug in for Maria's great show in the morning. I'm glad you're doing that. Arthur, let me come to you. I mean, I'm looking at this thing. Steve's is from the Unleash Prosperity. Establishment surveys unit response rates have collapsed in the last 10 years. Now, especially, yes, due to COVID, and since COVID, it stayed at the bottom. But the response rate used to be 60%, and it's now dropped to less than 45%. So, Art, the point is, you're going to put in a new BLS commissioner. He or she probably will do an audit, shake up the staff. They're going to have to find new methodologies, Arthur. And, you know, you're a smart guy. What do you think they ought to do?
Well, I was very involved with this, as you were, Larry, long ago and far away. You know, I was the first chief economist at the OMB, and you were the chief economist 10 years later there. And these numbers are absolutely critical, and they should be reviewed all the time. And, you know, when you get something like COVID coming in and you've got automatic seasonal adjustments, the COVID can't handle the seasonal adjustments correctly. You need a thorough review and analysis of these programs. We do rely on these data very, very much. I doubt very much that anyone deliberately in the departments or agencies, I just hope they didn't deliberately fudge the numbers. I can't imagine they did that. But in these types of turmoil, we really need to rely on these types of numbers, and therefore we need to have them as accurate as possible. And a good review committee would be really special. And I think that's what we need to do.
Actually, that's a good point. But the other thing is this birth and death model, which is so flawed. All that means is the birth of new businesses and jobs and the death of old businesses and jobs. Some months, many months, that's the biggest factor in the entire jobs report.
Yeah.
And it's a flawed econometric model. Yes. And I think they ought to junk it. Steve, you're nodding your head. I agree. I mean, I just think that there's got to be a better way. Okay. Another thing Mr. President Trump talked about was this Federal Reserve situation. We're going to play some tape on that. Take a listen, fellas.
I have a couple of people in mind. I'll be announcing somebody for the filling of the person that left. A woman left, as you know, who was I guess a Biden appointment. And I think she left because she agreed with me on interest rates, and yet they were on the other side of the ballpark, right? So I'll be announcing that probably over the next couple of days.
All right, next couple of days. Art Laffer, among the candidates, actually, there's two choices here. One is he could appoint somebody to this open seat and name that person as his new chairman. I know it wouldn't take effect until May, but it sure would shake up the musical chairs at the Fed, kind of undermine Jay Powell. Or he could just appoint somebody for 4 or 5 months and then wait until Mr. Powell leaves his chair next May. Tell me your thinking on this point, please.
Well, I think he should appoint the person who's going to make chairman as soon as possible, and that would be filling up this temporary and then go to the Larry, as you know, I really don't think the Fed should be independent. I don't think the Defense Department should be independent or the Treasury should be independent. I mean, the Fed is part of the administration, and it should be run by the administration, and an independent Fed just causes all sorts of problems. The president's going to be blamed for a bad economy and going to be credited for a good economy. He should have all the levers possible under his control that contribute to that economy. And he needs to have control of the Fed as soon as he takes office. And I'm just sorry. These independent Fedders are just wrong, I think. This is part of the government, part of the administration. It should be there. And he should have control of it right away.
That's a very interesting point of view. Steve Moore, what's your Arthur says president should put somebody in there, name that person to be the chair. They'd fill in another spot later on. And the Federal Reserve shouldn't be. You know, I always say it's independent, but it's not separate from the planet Earth, for heaven's sakes. It is part of the government. Steve Moore, what's your take on this?
Well, I'm going to make a serious point, which is two of Donald Trump's favorite economists in the whole world are on this screen with me right now, you and Arthur. And I think one of the two of you would be an excellent Fed chair, and I mean that sincerely. But if Kevin Hassett gets it, I'm great with that. Kevin Warsh, I'm great with that. I mean, a lot of good choices to be made here. But you guys go back to the Reagan years, and, you know, Paul Volcker used to always say, I couldn't have done it without Reagan. You know, Paul Volcker is the guy who extinguished inflation when we had, what, 11% inflation under Jimmy Carter, and Reagan was with them the whole way. And to restore the value of the dollar and the soundness of our currency, that's exactly what we need right now.
So basically, you're agreeing with Art. Okay, the Fed is not all that independent, and you know, Art, you make such a good point. Presidents will live and die. If they appoint somebody bad at the Fed, it will cost them politically.
That's right.
If someone who permits high inflation, which would breed high unemployment. If they appoint a sound money person with low inflation and low unemployment, they'll take the credit. So you're saying presidents have incentives to appoint the best possible person.
Yeah, you want to align authority with responsibility. You just have to do that. And I remember the last segment, Larry, you mentioned the three people, Bessent, Hassett, and Warsh, and you said you didn't want to make a choice in that. I'd like to weigh in on that if I could, just a little bit. We've got Kevin Hassett in a perfect position. He's the best guy except for the predecessor, where he's tied with that predecessor as chairman, head of the NEC. And you know, he's really good there. He's got the president's ear all the time. Why take him away from that job? Scott Bessent, you don't get a better Secretary of the Treasury than that. I think bringing in Kevin Warsh would make that troika, that triumphant troika, phenomenal. So I'm really in favor of Kevin Warsh coming in. He's great.
Right,
and he really understands the price rule. Sorry.
I'm just saying we run out of time. The president is watching this show, and I'm glad you've given him sound advice. And I'll leave it there. We're all pals, and we're all good friends. Steve Moore, thank you. And Arthur Laffer, thank you. Very, very interesting.